No one's logged in yet. Oh, there we go. Good morning. Welcome to the MUTCD webinar. We have about 2 minutes. We'll let you guys log in and then we'll get started.
And it is 1 hour, right, Amanda?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
1 hour. Wait a few more seconds, then we'll get on to our intro. It is 9 o'clock on the dot. Good morning, and thank you guys for joining us for the MUTCD webinar. My name is Amanda Link. I'm the communications specialist here at the New York State LTAP Center. Al Bachner will be presenting today, but before we get into that, we'll go over our typical webinar steps. So if you can open up your chat, I will be putting in some links for you to access that Al will be talking about. One of them is on the Cornell box, and I know some people have some firewall restrictions. So just send me an email and I'll send you the PDF version. This webinar is I'll send you a PDF. This webinar is PDH worthy. So you have to be on for 90% of the webinar, and we'll get that information sent to you later. If you are outside New York State, check with your local LTAP center, see if you can get credit. You can ask questions in our Q&A box. Jody will be monitoring that as well. So we have a few poll questions to start out the morning. So the first one is, I work for. We have towns, county, city or village, state or federal, tribal, private, and the weekend. All right, looks like we have 13% towns, 43% county, 9% city or village, 13% federal or state, and 22% private. All right, next we have my job is, oops. So administrator, highway superintendent, DPW commissioner, engineer, field crew, board member, or none of the above. If it's none of the above, you can throw it in the Q&A. So we have majority engineers, some highway superintendents, field crew, board members as well. Next, we have years in current position. We have less than a month, less than a year, 1 to 2 years, 3 to 5 years, 5 to 10 years, 11 to 20 years. It looks like we have a good range from less than a year to 11 to 20 years. So a lot of experience and little experience. And then lastly, in the Q&A, if you can type in where you are from. So you can type the county, maybe the town, see if Al and I can guess what county you're in. We have Westchester, Orange County, Yates County, Syracuse, Buffalo, Rochester, Sullivan, Warren, Tompkins. So a little bit everywhere. And with that, I will turn it over to Al. I'll see you guys in an hour.
Good morning and welcome to a presentation today on the MUTCD and the whys. And I want to thank Amanda and Jody for being in today. They'll be looking at the chat to see if there's any questions. Please feel free to ask as we go along, and I'll try to get you an answer. As I said, my name is Al Bachner. My background, I worked for New York State DOT for over 30 some odd years. I worked in the traffic engineering and safety group on Region 10. That's located out in Hauppauge on Long Island. And today I'm in Bayshore, New York. So the first thing we want to do is we want to say, what is MUTCD and why is there an MUTCD? So that's an abbreviation, obviously. And what does it stand for? Well, that's the National Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices. And that's the standard that we should all be using throughout the state. And why is there a manual on uniform traffic control devices? I don't know, how many of you have it on your bookshelf? Let's look at some history here. Oh my goodness, we're going to have to hit the books. So I did some research, and let's see, in the early days of the US, if we wanted to get from one place to another, we had to sign up for a guided group tour, or we needed to go out and hire a guide, unless we knew how to get there. And along came this contraption, this horseless carriage, and it was kind of a novelty, but I had some problems with it because we didn't have a system that was set up to really handle it. And unlike horse-drawn vehicles, we'd get into situations like this and we'd have to go out and get some horses to get ourselves out. And there wasn't much sympathy for people with automobiles because they were usually the rich people. But along came a fad, the fad of the bicycle, and it swept the nation. And the bicycle was a vehicle that needed a paved surface, a good surface to ride on. So with this fad sweeping the nation, there was a need to pave our roadway systems or create a roadway system. And that was underway, and we now got reasonable roadways or surfaces that vehicles could ride on. And there was our horseless carriage again. So they knew where they were, they know where they wanted to go, and now the question was, how did they get there? There was, of course, GPS. Well, the GPS, it's not the GPS that we know today. It's a different GPS. And I apologize, the computer is, of course, while I'm straightening out the computer, I see there's a question in the Q&A.
Oh yeah, it's about the handouts. I got it.
Okay, thank you. So this was the grandparents' positioning system. You know, how do we get there? Or you go up to this tree, you continue through the woods. But that only works so well. how do you get from one place to the other? And I see there are people there that have a lot of 20 years of experience in our audience, and maybe they remember their parents or their grandparents using these things. There were route markers, stop and ask directions. Okay, that's when all else fails. Or the road maps. Today, these are hard to find, but when I was growing up, they were at every fuel station, and they were free. And in our family, we have a saying, whoops, road maps, where would we be without them? So here we are, we have the horseless carriage, and we got to get from one place to the other, and it is the device of the rich. And people that have money wanted to get from one place to another, so they organized auto clubs. And the auto clubs, they took on the business of, what are we going to do to help ourselves? So they created, they had money to do things. They created sign network throughout New York. California Auto Club installed traffic signs around San Francisco. And sometimes competing clubs signed with conflicting routes. Maybe they had a route that wanted to bring them past a certain business, and they would sign to go past that business. And they came up with an idea to use different colors for their route signs. Now, not only was there the question of getting from one place to another, but there was safety and efficiency. There was vehicles crowding the road, and who has the right of way and what is the right of way. So there was a need for not only guiding people from one place to another, but there was a need to warn them and regulate it. And some firsts or center lines, pavement markings, traffic signal installations, the first stop sign in Detroit. And the federal government got involved, and they required the states to have a highway department to get funding. You want money from the feds, you have to do something. That sound familiar today? Wisconsin puts up official route signs and a 3-color traffic signal. We'll talk about that in a little bit. There's a picture of a traffic signal in New York in the 1950s. And if you take a close look, you'll notice that it only has two heads facing each approach. The top one was red and the bottom one was green. Let's take another look. This is Broadway in the 1950s. Look at those styles. 2 heads. And notice the picture on the right. That was something, I don't know if it was just unique to New York, but it was a hanging signal. And in the 1950s, you were required to stop not only at the intersection where the signal was, but at the previous the intersection prior to that, if you could see the hanging signal. So it controlled multiple intersections on the through route. And who the heck is this guy? This guy is known, his name is William Phelps Eno, and he's known as the father of traffic safety. He was born in 1858 and passed away in 1945. But at the age of 9, he had an interesting experience long before the horseless carriage was around. He was out with his mom in a horse-drawn wagon, and they got caught in a traffic jam. And it was just a few wagons, but nobody would give up the right of way, and it blocked the street. And that made an impression on him, and he thought there should be some rules and organization. So he worked on developing these rules in his later life, and he came up with a rules for driving, He worked in New York City, and that's a early drawing of Columbus Circle in Manhattan. And Columbus Circle was a circle, but it had two-way traffic, and it had an enormous amount of accidents or incidents as we know it today. And he was the first one to suggest making it one way and thereby organizing the circle and limiting the conflict points. And then he came up with the idea of guide signs, and there's an early guide sign. So safety and warning signs and regulations. Now the shape of the sign. The stop sign, why is it 8-sided? Why is the railroad sign, warning sign, round? Well, the belief was that they wanted to communicate the hazard that might lie ahead. And the feeling was that the more sides a sign contained, it meant the more important the sign was to the operator's safety. So they gave the stop sign 8 sides. Railroad sign, well, that's a circle, but you mathematicians know that a circle is considered having infinite sides. So that was a very hazardous location that they wanted to identify. Now, out of Enno's work was the evolution of the MUTCD. And here we can see, starting in 1935 up to our present day national manual, the evolution that took place. Early stop signs. Notice the stop sign in the middle has those glass stones. And that was the beginning of something called retroreflectivity to make the signs visible at night. And then in 1954, the color of the stop sign changed. And this was an old ad, and it's something that it emphasizes something we're trying to do today. Try to stop today's traffic with yesterday's signs. Make sure you're using the correct signs. And back in 2007, an important thing took place in New York State. The national manual was adopted by New York State. Up until that time, the state wrote its own regulations, its own manual that conformed to the national manual, but it was its own manual. It was more restrictive. Back in 2007, the state was under some financial constraints, and they decided that instead of updating their manual and writing their own manual, they'd adopt the national manual. And then the national manual was updated again, or they needed to have the special laws in New York State conform to the national manual, so they wrote a New York State supplement that came out in March of 2008. And then they updated the manual, and notice the date here, the edition's 2009, but it came out in January 2010. And it took the New York State until March of 2011 to come out with a supplement that complied or conformed to the 2009 National Manual. When's the next edition coming out? That's a good question. This was a blurb that is on the FHWA's website. I checked it last night. That blurb is still up there. I was expecting that they would be releasing the new manual just prior to us putting this course out. But they're still saying the next edition will be available soon. And we got to remember that the 2009 manual didn't come out until 2010. So I guess we're still on that type of timetable. Now, what's important to us is that the manual comprised the present, the past and the present, the standards and specifications for a uniform traffic control system. Why do we want a uniform traffic control system? Well, we want it to be uniform so that the motorist sees a traffic control device and knows exactly what it means and what their response should be. And that's the manual is the use of the manual is mandated under New York State Vehicle and Traffic Law, and that's set in section 1688. So the manual isn't just a good idea, it's the law. And in New York State, we're mandated to follow it. And with any law, there are terms that are used, and we have to have an understanding of what they mean under the law. Standards, a mandatory shall condition. You might see the word standards, or you might see the word shall. That means it's mandatory. Guidance or should, an advisory condition. It's a good idea to do that, but we could have reasons to change it. And options or may, a permissive condition. And then we'll see another word, support, and that looks pretty important, but that's just giving us some background information. Let's take a closer look at these terms. Standards, a mandatory shall condition. So the manual says a stop sign shall be red. It shall have 8 sides, and we have no discretion there. The like one cutesy village on Long Island wanted to install yellow stop signs because they felt they were an historic village. But when they checked the manual, they saw they had no discretion. Guidance, the advisory or should condition, putting up a warning sign. And the manual tells us that warning sign should be, we need to have it in advance of the condition so the motorist has time to adjust their operation to be able to navigate that condition safely and comfortably. The curb warning sign might need to be posted. It would say should be posted 250 feet in advance of the condition. So we go out there and we pace off. We don't have to get a survey crew. We go out and we pace off 250 feet, and bingo, it turns out that that's right in the middle of an intersection. Well, that's not a good place to place a signpost. So we can either lengthen out the distance or shorten the distance, and that would fall into the and follow the should condition, not violate it. Options or may condition. To illustrate this, I'm using a non-traffic sign. Not all signs in the manual are signs that regulate traffic. There's a sign out there that says drug-free school zone, and that says it may be installed. So you have discretion. You can decide to install it or not install it. And if you do decide to install it, then you go down and you read further, and there's restrictions. It says it shall be installed no further than a certain number of feet from a school or park property. So there it has the may, you make the decision. Do you want to install it or not install it? Once you make a decision to install it, you can come under a should, where it can only be installed in certain locations. And again, the support is just giving us some information to help us as we're making these decisions. Now, the standards, the signs, markings, and signals, they give us posting locations, text, shape, and color. And again, all of these are standardized to help us convey a message to the motorists so that they know exactly what to expect and how to react. And we recognize signs, especially, in 3 ways. First is color, and then shape, and lastly, message. And all of these things give us clues about what the sign, the message, or the action the sign is asking us to take as a motorist. Let's take a quick test and see if we can recognize the signs with very little information. We'll just look at shape. Now, you don't have to enter this in the chat, but I'm sure you're Your lips are moving and you're telling me that this is a stop sign. And what color would you expect it to be? Without seeing it, you expect it to be red. And you expect the words to say STOP. Now, a motorist going down the roadway, even at a distance, just seeing the color and the shape of the sign without reading the legend, wouldn't know exactly what this sign is asking the motorist to do. Oh, a triangle. Are those lips moving? Are they saying yield sign? And what color would it be? Again, a red sign. Again, conveying a message to the motorist exactly what they should expect. Now, this is a rectangular sign. We have lots of rectangular signs out there. What makes this rectangular sign unique? Its long axis is vertical. Other rectangular signs have the long axis horizontal, but now we're talking about a rectangular sign with its long axis vertical. What would you expect this sign to say? Take a moment, think about it. Well, I'm sure a lot of you have said it's a speed limit sign. You'd be exactly right. But it could be any regulatory sign. Parking signs are this same shape. And an X. What's an X? Oh, how many sides does this have to it? This must be a significant hazard that they're trying to convey. Well, that's a railroad crossing, Buck. And here's our pizza tray, infinite sides. Again, we covered this earlier, so I'm sure you all got this. This is a railroad crossing sign. It's a warning sign placed in advance of the railroad crossing. The buck is placed at the tracks. And this is actually a square sign, but it's been rotated 45 degrees. So we call this a diamond shape. And it gives it a different appearance than if it hadn't been rotated. And what do you expect this sign to say? What color do you expect this sign to be? Well, I'd imagine that many of you would say, oh, it would be yellow with a black legend. It's a warning sign to warn us of something in the roadway ahead that we have to negotiate or maybe adjust our speed for. Well, we have two populations of drivers going down our roadway. There's the familiar driver, and they don't need any instructions. They're not looking for any signs. And then there's the stranger to the area, and they're looking for every sign. So we can change the color on these warning signs to help notify not only the stranger, but also to call attention to those familiar drivers. And we use the orange and black warning signs for highway work zone signs. And that the special color on that helps alert the familiar driver that there's something different out there. We also have the they're affectionately known as the pink signs. These are for emergency vehicles, response teams, the police or fire department that need to take action out there. And again, they chose a different color to help alert the motorist that there's something different out there. And then there's the fluorescent yellow-green, and those are used for the school series and the pedestrian series because those people are so vulnerable. We want to call special attention. What about this? Does this say, let's go Mets? Oh, geez, they finally won a game yesterday or the other day. I record the games. I haven't finished watching last night's game. This is the pennant. And what does it say? Let's go Mets, let's go Yankees, let's go Giants. No, it tells us whether or not we're allowed to pass. And home plate, talking about baseball. What color would you expect this sign to be? Well, under previous manuals, it was yellow. I hope you don't have these signs out there. It's a school zone or school area sign, the school series. They should be the fluorescent yellow-green. And those signs, as they've worn out, and they should all be gone by now, and you shouldn't be reposting them in that color. You should have all the fluorescent signs. And one thing the manual did was it in the school series used that under the older manual, you had both a school zone and a school crossing. And under the present manual, the school crossing is symbolized by a down arrow. And this looks like a shoulder patch. What is it? Well, this is a county route marker. And this particular route happens to be in Rockland County. Remember that as your sign shop is making up signs to put the appropriate county name on it. Don't just copy the manual and put in Rockland County. I found a Rockland County sign one time up near Windham Mountain. And this is a rectangular sign, and its long axis, this is horizontal. That's different than the rectangular sign we saw earlier where the long axis was vertical. What is this sign? This is a guide sign. It helps us get from one place to another. And it's typically a green background with white legend. And you might see the street name signs that are posted on the corner of your block. They are guide signs, and they could be, the manual gives you options of color. In fact, on Long Island, one of the things that's interesting, if you're in the town of Islip has, for many years, used white on blue for their street name signs. So it's easy to identify if you're in the town of Islip by just looking at the street name sign. If it's white on blue, you're in the town of Islip, as the other towns typically use white on green. Now, how do we use the manual in New York State? Well, it's actually a two-step process. I don't know if anybody is listening. We may have some visitors from other states. Obviously, you'd have to consult your state to see what the process is in your state. First, refer to the national manual. We're thinking of putting up a sign, so we first look at the national manual. We take a look at that. Then we consult the New York State manual to determine if additional guidance is provided. Let's see how that works. So here we are in the national manual, and we're looking up the right-of-way at an intersection. And we find that that's under section 2B.04. Notice it's highlighted in blue. So we read everything there is to read in the national manual. And we take note of it and make sure to follow that. But are we done? No. Now we need to take a look at the New York State Supplement. And we go to that same section, 2B.04. And the state supplement is organized, the chapters are organized to correspond with the chapters in the national manual. As we look here, we can see that we have a 2B03 with some instructions. We have a 2B05, but with the state supplement is silent on 2B04. So that means there's nothing to add. So in this case, the provisions of the national manual are all we need to take care of. And the national manual, we should take note of, is divided up into 9 parts. General provisions, and this is interesting. If you have time, you have a rainy day and you're looking for something to do, take a look at part 1. It is loaded up with definitions, and it gives you insight into, as you read, exactly what the legal meaning is of each of the words that are contained in the manual. Part 2 talks about signs, general provisions on signs. Part 3 is markings, traffic signals in part 4. And I imagine that there aren't too many of you that work with traffic signals. But if you do, this is the section that you would look at. Then if you have low volume roads, and if you're concerned, you want to know what a low volume road is, we'll show you where a definition of that is that can help you in a moment. Part 6, temporary traffic controls. That's what we commonly call work zones. So if you're setting up work zones, part 6 is where you'd want to take a look. And Part 7 is schools, and then we have grade crossings in Part 8, and Part 9 is bicycle facilities. Cornell puts out a kind of synopsis or summary of the manual in a publication that they have called the Traffic Sign Handbook for Local Roads. And for a town or a village, and perhaps even the county, it has all the signs that you would typically need. This is a good resource to have with you when you're out in the field if you can't have the manual with you at the time. So over the years, these books have been updated to reflect the manuals that are in effect, and the latest one is the 2017. Now, when we open that up, one of the things we all like to do is we like to get right to the subject that we need. So if you turn to the appendix of the book, you'll find tables like this showing a picture of the sign, and then it tells us what the sign means, and then it tells us what section in the manual to look at, what page in the handbook it's on, and what the standard size of the sign is. So it gives you a lot of information right away, and it can be used as an index to the national manual. Back in the day when we had the state manual, this Cornell did a great job because they had another column here that listed not only the national manual, it also listed the state manuals sections, as they weren't correlated at that time. And I know Amanda sent out a tab for you to secure your PDF file so you can download it and print it out or save it to your phone and have it with you all the time. And and it will show you how to get it free if you haven't taken note of that. Go to the Cornell Local Roads website, navigate to how to navigate to the free manual on uniform traffic control devices in the supplement. You go to the Cornell local website, hit publications and resource. It's a pull down menu. Then go to all resources by category, left click, safety, left click, scroll down to MUTCD in the supplement, and you can download it. And this is what you would see when you're on their website. When you go to publications and resources, all resources by category, and then you'd hit safety and you'd be there. And signs. Well, they should fulfill a need, command attention, convey a clear, simple meaning, and command respect and attention. And they need to give time for proper response. Signs aren't like holiday decorations that we just install and put up and take down. So one of the things we need before we put up a sign or any traffic control device is we need an engineering study. And if you take our course on traffic safety, we'll show you how to do engineering studies. That's a course that we put on for you to attend. And it's important to have that because today you might have people in front of you that want a stop sign somewhere. You say, oh, the heck, all these people want a stop sign, let's just put it up. In fact, I've seen towns or villages that have, they have specifications. If they get five requests for a stop sign, they put it up. But then what happens is when you put up the stop sign, it's in front of somebody's house or near somebody's residence, and they don't like the sound of the stopping vehicles or the horns honking, and they want the stop sign taken down. So they send in 5 requests to have it taken down. Now it's going up, it's going down. So before you can put up a traffic control device, you need a professional engineering study to either put it up or take it down. and you need some documents in your files to say why you've taken that action. Once you decide to put up a sign, where do you put it? Well, the sign's put up in, actually, we live in a three-dimensional world. So it's put up longitudinal along the roadway. It's put up laterally, what distance from the roadway and what height above the roadway. Oh, and that's an old stop ahead sign. We better update that. Yeah, we need a symbol sign there. So if you're putting up stop ahead signs, they better all be symbol signs under today's manual. The sign height above the roadway. Notice it's the height above the roadway, not above the ground. It affects visibility, safety and run off the road actions. We'll talk about that a little bit as we go along. Pedestrian accessibility and safety. We have a good picture to show you on that. And here we have some shots showing us out of the manual what the sign heights are. Notice that they're measured from not the ground, but the height of the roadway to the bottom of the sign. Now, this is very important when you're doing work zone signing. Some of you have work zone sign stands that are just 1 foot above the ground. They display the bottom of the sign 1 foot above the ground. They're fixed. And that's okay, because work zone signings for temporary conditions, that meets the standards of the manual. But it's 1 foot above the ground, so above the roadway, not above the ground. So if we were putting a work zone sign in the situations where these warning signs are, notice that the shoulder drops off, or the roadside drops off, and the sign would be 1 foot above the ground, but not 1 foot above the roadway. So check that off on your list. And the signing above the roadway, again, and this illustrates why we want the bottom of the sign a minimum of 7 foot above the roadway. Notice this is a pathway, that's a parking lot in the back, and vehicles parked back there to walk up this road, this sidewalk to get to Main Street. And the top of the sign needs to be 9 foot. Why 9 foot? Well, if a vehicle, an errant vehicle hits the signpost would bend and the sign would bend down towards the car. If the top of the sign is 9 foot or greater, then the sign will strike the roof of the car, and the broken signpost and sign will pass over the top of the car without harming the occupants of the vehicle. If the top of the sign is less than 9 foot, there's a pretty good probability that the sign, as the signpost bends, will cut through the windshield and cut through the compartment, the passenger compartment, like a hot knife through butter. Now, how do we place signs along the highway? How far off the highway? Well, 12 foot from the edge of a travel lane where we have a shoulder that's less than 6 foot, and 6 foot from a stabilized shoulder where the shoulder's 6 foot or greater. So in both those cases, the sign is getting 12 foot off the edge of the travel lane. Now, naturally, you have constricted areas where you can only place signs on your municipal property. You can't go back onto private property. So you'd have a constraint there, and you can only put the sign as far as your right-of-way allows you. On curbed roads within 2 feet from the curb. Let's take a look at that. So notice the 12 foot is not measured to the center of the sign, it's measured to the near edge of the sign. So when you're putting in your signpost, you got to do a little bit of math to figure out where to put the signpost. And 2 foot minimum from the edge of the sign to the face of curve. Now, why is that? Well, let's take a look. What's happening to this sign? Well, it's too close to the roadway. And there's no curb here, but it illustrates the problem. What's happening is this sign is probably getting impacted by either mirrors on buses or trucks. It's pretty high, so I doubt that vehicles are hitting it, passenger vehicles. But or as the vehicle is turning, the turning radius of the vehicle, the side of the vehicle is scraping that stop sign. And as a highway official, you may look at that and say, that's got a low priority to go out and correct that. But think about a school bus coming to this intersection and the bus windows being open, and those young students just returning from a victory football game, all waving out the window at their fans along the side of the road, and not paying attention. And as the driver swings around this corner, a young student could lose an arm. So this is an important thing as you see this along your highway to take care of. Longitudinal placement. Where do they get placed along the highway? We want to locate them to be seen. And notice here the stop sign has a street name sign above it. That helps give the motorists some idea of where they are, and that's a legal posting under our manual. Locate signs to provide time for proper response. So this sign, an intersection ahead sign, is also telling us the name of the intersection ahead, and that's a legal posting. Legal posting. And notice that the supplemental panel is also in yellow with black legend. And then we may have to put up signs, multiple signs. We want to spread them out. And that would depend on the operating speed. 85th percentile, we're talking about operating speed. And we want to organize the signs. The motorists will go down, they see a totem poles of signs, and which one's important to them. Here it's easy for them to pick out the sign that they're interested in and the direction that they want to go. Here's some groupings that may not be so well thought out. So think about how you're placing your signs. And here's a village, and there's at least 5 warning signs posted. Take a look in the top right-hand corner is the first one. That's a curve warning sign. There's an intersection, another intersection. Then there's a firehouse warning sign further down. And here, the superintendent or the highway department laid them out nicely. They have them separated. And the general rule is 5 to 7 times the speed limit. So the example here is 35 miles per hour times 5, about 175 feet between signs. Now, our regulatory signs, longitudinal placement, are generally placed where the regulation applies. So that's pretty simple. We look in a manual and it tells us where to put the signs. And if we look up the stop sign, here's another example of how to use the manual. We might go to the Cornell Traffic Sign Handbook, and we'd see that section 2B10 is where stop signs are covered. So then we open up the National Manual, we read that, and it tells us where to put a stop sign. But are we done? Well, let's take a look. What about the supplement? Well, we look up 2B.10, and we find that there's more information there. So we have to take that into account before we place the stop sign. Warning signs, their longitudinal placement. Well, we got lots of warning signs, and we got to think about how they're placed. We're generally looking at the driver's reaction time. And you young guys all playing those video games, you got really fast reaction time. Now, I play video games, but my video game is solitaire, so my reaction time's a little bit slower. But these reaction times, they're not what we have to consider for a driver. What happens with a driver? Many times our drivers are distracted as they go down the road. They're doing different things. They might be imbibed in alcohol or drugs. And where do children sit now? They sit in the back seat, facing away from, facing the rear of the car. Well, they're much safer there. But when that child starts to act up, mom and dad's attention go right to the child and leave the roadway. So these distracted drivers, they have a reaction time of 2.5 seconds. And we got to think, how far does a vehicle travel at just a modest 40 miles per hour in 2.5 seconds? Mathematics. Or is it mathematics? And you remember distance equals rate times time. You remember those problems? So we take the rate and we multiply it by the time. But oh, the speed's in miles per hour, the time's in seconds. And what do we have? Mixed units. We have to do something called conversions. How do you do conversions? Well, let's think about it. There's an easy way to convert, let's say 40 miles per hour to feet per second. And let's do the math together. Write the speed in miles per hour. So we write down 40. Then write half of the speed, 20. Now add them together. You've just converted 40 miles per hour to 60 feet per second. 40 miles per hour is a little bit less than 60 feet per second. Notice I put in that qualifier, a little bit less than 60 feet per second. Let's see, let's take a look at what we've done here. 40 plus 20 is 60. Well, that's the same as taking 40 and multiplying it by 1.5. That would be called a conversion factor. But the actual conversion factor is 1.47. So 40 miles per hour would come out to 58.8 feet per second. I think a reasonable person might round that off to 60. So let's just stick with the 60 feet per second to simplify the math. So now what's the distance travel in that 2.5 seconds of distracted driver time? 60 feet per second. The first second they travel 60 feet. Another second they travel another 60 feet. And a half a second they travel 30 feet. So the vehicle's traveled 100 feet just for the person to notice that that condition is ahead. That's 150 feet for them to get their foot from the gas pedal to the brake. The vehicle has not begun to stop. In order to calculate the full stopping distance, we'd have to go through something called Newton's laws to calculate the stopping distance. So, do we need to do these mathematics every time we want to post a sign? Absolutely not. The manual does it. It does it for us. As we enter the manual, we'll see there's a condition A, and that's where vehicles are merging, changing lanes. These are some examples. And we go to table 2C-4, and we'll find that in the New York State supplement. And here we go down condition A, we come across at 40, and it tells us those signs need to be 825 feet. Now that's a should. What happens with condition B? If there's a condition A, there must be a condition B. These are examples of condition B, where the motorist has to adjust their speed to an appropriate speed so they can safely and comfortably negotiate the obstacle or the condition in front of them. And again, we go to the same table. We go down for the T intersection. They may have to come to a stop. So we go down 0 would be the advisory speed. We come across, in this case, was 50 miles per hour that we're traveling at, and we get 425 feet is the advanced posting. What happens with a curve warning sign? They don't have to come to a stop, but through some means, we allocate what is the safe and operating speed, maybe a ball bank indicator, and we find that it's 30 miles per hour. We come across at 40, we read 225 feet, and that sign should be posted 225 feet of the first curve. Guide signs, they have a lot of flexibility. And with guide signs, we refer to the manual. Where should we place them? They're usually less critical than regulatory and warning signs. And you adjust those before you adjust other signs on an arterial highway, non-freeway. Warning signs over regulatory signs, warning message of greater hazard over lesser, regulatory next in importance with most important regulation supersedes others. And guide signs we normally have lots of flexibility in. Did we get any questions? Did I bore the shoes off everybody? Anybody still out there?
No questions. You covered everything.
Okay. Well, and it looks like we're running pretty good on time. We have some people who are interested in the PDHs, and there may be also some people interested in downloading those PDFs too. But the PDHs, we'll take a little quiz now. Are we ready?
Yep.
Okay, which is not a need for a good traffic control device? Fulfilling a need, command respect, command attention, make the public feel good, command respect, giving time for response.
People are logging their answers.
Remember, a reason not a good reason for a sign. Have we got answers?
Yes, we do.
Okay, it looks good. And remember, before you put up any sign, you need a properly conducted and documented engineering study. Also, before you put up any sign or pavement marking or remove any sign or pavement marking, you need a properly documented engineering study. And that should be maintained in your records. And my machine is freezing up. Come on, Murphy. I think I'm freezing up with your.
So you have the next one up. It says, which is not a need for a good signage.
Yeah, well, that was the one we just did.
Oh. Well,
I think the poll questions are.
we're messing with you.
Yeah.
Well, this is also the same answer on the poll. So the answer is making the public feel good is not a reason.
Right. Right. We did that one.
Okay. So the next one I have is a car traveling 30 miles per hour travels how far in 5 seconds? The answer is in feet. First answer is 200. Second answer is 180. We have 225, 160, and 250.
Right. Now let's consider, how do we do that? We take the 30, write that down, take half of 30 is 15, so that's 45. And now we multiply that by 5 times 45.
Again, our answers are 200, 180, 225, 160, and 250.
Al, while they are answering that question, I do have one that says, do all road intersecting with main roads require stop signs?
Well, all roads require main roads require some sort of traffic control device. You might have a stop sign, you might have a yield sign, you might have a merge sign, or you may have a traffic signal, a three color traffic signal. Now, if you're going through a subdivision, not all roads require a traffic control device. I'm sorry, not all roads would require an all-way stop sign. Okay.
And our answer, 87% picked 225.
Yeah, it's funny. I can't even drop out of my PowerPoint. Apparently, the poll questions have locked up my PowerPoint. So why don't you put up the next question? I think I have another question there.
Yep. Oh, here we
Yeah.
go. What does MUTCD stand for? Manual on uniform traffic control devices, manual of uniform traffic control devices, manual on unicorn traffic control devices, manual on uniform traffic controlling devices. Personally think it's the third one, manual on unicorn traffic
Right.
control
That's
devices.
what my grandchildren would say.
Wait a few more seconds. A few more people. All right, so it looks like we have 36% saying manual on uniform traffic control devices and 64% saying manual of uniform traffic control devices.
Okay, that's where I expected the division to be. It's the on. And do I have any more slides now? Let's see.
I think you just had the thank you slide after that.
Yeah, I'm trying to drop out of my PowerPoint. Let's see. And there's the manual for you to take manual on. Oh, and if you're ever in the company of FHWA people, they don't want to hear that it's a federal manual. They insist that it's a national manual. I don't know why they're upset about that, but if you've taken one of our courses, make sure that they know that it's national, that you know it's a national manual. So if we apply the MUTC properly, we'll all get home safely. And again, if there's technical training and assistance workshops at Cornell Local Roads, go to their website. I want to thank you for your attention today, and Amanda and Jody, thank you for your help. And of course, we wouldn't have had a presentation if Murphy wasn't there to have the PowerPoint lock up. Any other questions?
Thank you all for presenting, and thank you guys for being on with us again. And we'll see you next week for snow and ice control. Everyone have a good rest of your day and stay dry.
Stay cool.
Thank you. Bye.